Guys, welcome back to Strong Successful Male. So for today, I'm going to be covering a very entertaining article, which is titled, Woke Media Struggles to Explain Why Gen Z Men Are Turning Against Feminism. And guys, this article comes from the independent media site Zero Hedge. In case you haven't checked it out, I recommend you do. I'll post a link here. It's good because they post a lot of stuff and cover a lot of stuff that the mainstream media doesn't want to talk about. This article really goes into research that's been done through surveys and studies and polls and all that from young guys in their 20s, the Gen Z crowd, and discovering, guess what, they're not quite buying anymore the crap that's been forced upon them since birth. Essentially, and focusing on the feminist movement and those ideas, that type of stuff. And when I see something like this, I have to cover it. And I thought we were really going to go over here, guys, showing that there's hope. I know from statistics that I get provided from YouTube that I got a big chunk of dudes that watch me in their 20s. And that's really good to hear. That is the Gen Z crowd. And so hearing from them, getting emails from them and comments and all that, it does give me some hope here. Because obviously what's been shoveled down our throats for the last, well, let's be honest, we can debate and argue how long it's been going on, but it's been going on a very long time, especially very hard in the post-2000s. It's about time some guys are starting to wake up and realize these things. I mean, I started this whole channel because I got sick and tired of the nonsense out there. But anyhow, I'm going to go through this. You guys will find this quite entertaining and give some of you guys hope. So it starts off, says here, the progressive left operates on the assumption that generational indoctrination is cumulative. That is to say, they think that through time and indoctrination, they will eventually lay claims to the minds of 100% of the population. Each new generation is supposed to be more woke than the last one. However, this is not how society or individual psychology works. Moments of quote-unquote progress crash in flames all the time, often because they turn out to be regressive rather than progressive. And once the smoke clears and the societal experiment is dead, the public will usually go back to what worked best in the past. Exactly. Pretty much how nature designed us to be. As you are well aware, the feminist movement has tried to do the exact opposite. You know, the wackos on the far left and the feminist crowd have been trying to rewire it to make women more masculine like men, and to rewire men to be more feminine like women. And sadly, it had been successful for a while now, and still is having a negative impact, but a lot of guys are waking up to these things. And wait till you, by the way, see in this article who the mainstream folks decide to blame it on. You won't get any surprise there. Leftists thought they had the future in the bag with Generation Z. After all, this is the generation hit hardest with the woke propaganda. No other generation has been so overwhelmed with the various brainwashing, anti-white people racism, multiculturalism, socialist utopian fantasy, moral relativism, and anti-masculinity. I really do feel bad for the young generation. Good freaking Lord. But I can tell you that I got two nephews. How old are these guys? The one is turning 25 this summer, and the other one is, holy crap, he's going to be turning 22. And they are not like this at all. Thank the Lord. Except it would have worked too well with them being my nephews if they did fall for this crap. Shout out to the nephews if they happen to watch this video. Young women have been convinced that abandoning femininity, rejecting their biological destiny, and competing with men is true freedom. True freedom is in quotes. Third wave feminism teaches women that their ultimate goal in life is to achieve power by any means necessary. It's a dangerous delusion that relies on men to remain completely and utterly passive. In other words, embracing their feminine side, or the feminine side that these people want guys to believe they have. Because masculine men they are certainly not passive. Gen Z men have been taught from an early age that they are inherently evil monsters that must be subdued and caged, figuratively or literally. They are warned that they will become incels, dangerous landmines just waiting to explode unless they embrace feminism. How many times have you guys been labeled the I word? How many freaking times, either people you know, or when you leave a comment on an article or video, just because you just don't buy into the song and dance that's been going on for a while? I know I've been labeled that a lot. They are conditioned to see that traditional manhood as a social construct. Again, using an air quotes here. They will ultimately end in a bullet-riddled reign of toxic masculinity. They are told that the very root of their future happiness and sanity depends on leftist women accepting them as viable, docile, and safe. I've said this before many times. I'll say it again. I get new people all the time. There is a world of difference between positive traditional masculinity and what is called toxic masculinity. Okay? Traditional masculinity of leadership, of strength, being a rock for your family and loved ones, being able to be tough during adversity, hard times, all the type of stuff. Not to mention physical attributes of actually being strong and stuff like that. That's positive stuff. That's not bad. And that is your real traditional masculinity. I can go on and on about other things. The toxic stuff, obviously, is guys that are bullies and stuff like that. Traditional masculinity doesn't teach guys to be bullies. Bullies are a-holes and always been a-holes, and they always inevitably go down. You need traditional masculinity to deal with bullies and toxic a-holes and stuff like that. Except the wackos that, are our common enemy, they don't see it that way. Frankly, I've always thought that the idea of the bowel movement and these wackos is to crush traditional masculinity, and that makes the population and men easy to control. In other words, leftist gals have positioned themselves as the arbiters of society by declaring that they will be the people who decide what manhood should be. Well, that's what's been going on. I mean, think about it. What percentage of teachers from elementary school, middle school, high school are women? You get more men the higher up you go, middle school and high school, but it's generally women. And with so many young children being raised by single moms, because almost always they go with the mom, the boys have this female presence all the time. And a mom can't raise a boy to be a traditionally strong masculine man. She can raise him to be a good man, don't get me wrong, but the problem is that they often raise in the way they think that guys should be. And if they get embraced by this song and dance of evil traditional masculinity, they typically raise a bunch of little manginas. It's the fucking truth. Boys need a masculine presence, preferably in the house with mom and dad together. And if they're apart, he needs a grandfather or an uncle. Again, moms can work hard and provide for their boys and all that, but they need a man. The same way that a girl can use a mother, hopefully the right mother. Female social circles tend to function on collectivist terms. The group determines membership through a series of struggle sessions and shame tests to ensure that new members submit to their control. Male groups determine membership by merit. Who is the most useful, the hardest working, the most intelligent, the most able to move the group's success forward. Woke ideology is a vehicle for building a society using effeminate group structures. Most men are held back within such a system and left to rot, never fulfilling their roles because they are seen as threats to the power dynamics of the collective. Look what's been going on for a while. It's the freaking truth. According to recent surveys, Gen Z is abandoning the effeminist paradigm at a record pace. In 2019, in the United States, just 1/3 of Americans surveyed agreed that traditional gender roles were becoming more popular. In 2026, that number rose to 40% among Gen Z. The number spikes to 61%. Whoa. The woke media is struggling to understand what is happening and trying to figure out how they can shame Zoomer men into coming back to the progressive fold, as Esquire magazine asks. Now I'm going to go into the little quotes from what was printed in Esquire magazine trying to address this. But yeah, you bet your butt that the media and those that are trying to have created this mess and trying to perpetuate it are certainly wondering why. And you know what they're going to do? The easiest way? To shame the guys and point fingers at the evil influence to actually have young men wake up and question things. Esquire says here, both Esquire magazine and the New York Times, oh God, have recently lamented new data showing an unusual spike in support for traditional male/female roles in society among Gen Z males. Perhaps the most interesting data point comes from a recent survey out of King's College London, which polled a total of 23,000 adults across 29 countries worldwide. Okay, that's fairly diverse, 23,000 adults, 29 countries. It indicated that 57% of Zoomer men agree that women's rights have gone too far, to the point that men are being discriminated against. You bet your ass. The media, of course, acts as if this view is absurd, even though it is entirely accurate. For the past decade in the United States, until Donald Trump returned to the White House, DEI initiatives in corporations, colleges, and within many government institutions were deliberately designed to treat straight white men as second-class citizens, regardless of their qualifications. Yeah, well, a lot of that DEI crap is going down the drain real quick, and it's been doing that for, well, a little over a year now, because they realize that ain't going to work. It isn't working. I got a buddy of mine who told me like over a year ago that for a number of years, his company, because he's responsible for a lot of new hires coming on, they specifically told him they wanted to keep, I'm going to watch what I say here because this is YouTube, but let's just say they want to keep it very diverse. So guys that were men, I'm pointing out men that were certainly qualified for the positions, got passed over for other individuals of different backgrounds that in no way, shape, or form were qualified, but they wanted to hire them so they could show off and say that we got this many people of this background and that background, and they'll just learn on the job. And guess what? They're terrible employees. It's bullshit. Complete bullshit. They used to call it conspiracy theory, but numerous successful lawsuits have been filed against these institutions after years of rigging the system against men in favor of equality of outcome over equality of opportunity. When it comes to relationships in the modern West, women have been given carte blanche through the Me Too movement to act as destructive and promiscuous and unhinged as they please under the protection of the feminist zero accountability clause. Well, that's been the cornerstone of this channel and talking about that subject and making fun of that subject for the last 6 years. If anything goes wrong, they can simply blame men. And for a long time, everyone was expected to automatically believe them. Well, sadly, that was what happened for a long time. Not as much anymore. Esquire engages in this same refusal to question women, blaming podcasts and the male loneliness epidemic for the rise in traditional views among Gen Z. They will not consider the possibility that this trend is caused by blowback from the trespasses of militant feminist ideology. Feminists can do no wrong, and Esquire notes the following. Well, before I read what Esquire said, notice that blaming the podcasts, in other words, channels, podcasts, people like me. It's my fault. What do I do, guys? I read articles. I read stories. Thousands of them backing up what all of us know. What is self-evident. But what is self-evident goes against that ideology and teachings, therefore we're the bad guys. And don't get me started with this whole male loneliness epidemic. Sure, I'm sure there's some guys out there that are lonely and wish they could meet a traditional gal and have a family, not have to deal with the crap they have today. But most guys I've noticed, I've talked to, I've encountered, exchanged emails and messages with over the years, they're not lonely. They're quite happy on their own. Now here's the thing from Esquire magazine. The study doesn't get into the why of respondents' answers, but one guess is that this is the result of a generation raised on podcasts. Here we go again. Around every corner of the internet, members of the so-called manosphere lurk, assuring young men that their failures and setbacks are not their fault. In fact, they are the persecuted ones. The world would be better off if women were subservient to guys. Progress, they seem to think, has gone too far. So here you are blaming the podcasts again and saying that guys in the manosphere or anything that could be connected to that are pretty much telling guys out there that any failures and scripts that have happened to you, it's not your fault. Don't blame yourself, blame everybody else. Blame the effinists. I think from day one, I've made it clear that any guy writes into me or has done something stupid, I'm going to blame him. And I smack them accordingly. So I don't want to hear that. I'm sure there's channels out there and podcasts that cater to an audience and tell them what they want to hear. But I'm going to tell guys that, no, you're fucking up. The manosphere did nothing more than point out the inconsistencies of the feminist movement and warn about the clear social decline that feminism has caused for men and women alike. Progress for the political left requires that men continue to sacrifice for the collective while never gaining any individual benefits in return. Well, that sums it up. The imbalance of society is scrambling to appease narcissistic gals has radicalized an entire generation of men. Esquire notes the following. Okay, back to Esquire. They said, what's more interesting, or most interesting, is how divided Gen Z men and Gen Z women are on gender roles and relationships, which makes a ton of sense, because you haven't heard, Gen Z women are facing a nightmare of a dating scene. In an opinion piece for the New York Times, Christine Emba claims that it's not just app burnout or incels, well, back to the incels, at least no more so than in my generation. Instead, there's a fundamental disconnect between what straight young men and women want from one another. Well, did they just basically say that the young gals, the Gen Z gals, are having a hard time with the guys out there? Hello. If anybody's having a hard time with the gals out there in the dating scene, it's the young men seeing what they're seeing, for goodness sake. I mean, this is the generation that was raised on smartphones and are addicted to attention and validation through various social media, things like that. And gals flaunting their parts and so forth. Not, they don't all do it, but a lot do. That's what young guys are dealing with, amongst many other things, and they don't want that. And then there's the other gals that are these freaking G.I. Joe women out there. They're all a bunch of fucking Grace Jones types. Remember Grace Jones? Conan the Destroyer? Well, some of you guys know what I'm talking about here. Nobody wants that, okay? 31% of Gen Z men now agree that a wife should always obey her husband. Compare this to 18% of baby boomers. 59% of Gen Z men say that men are expected to do too much to support equality. In every category, Gen Z greatly surpasses aging baby boomers on traditional values. How interesting. Big changes are coming in the form of masculine-driven cultural reckoning. Perhaps it's because feminism flew too close to the sun and got burned. Well, let's be honest. The pendulum swung too far. And as a result of that, too far, going back. Rarely, for a little while, you'll have it in the middle, but it's usually back and forth, back and forth. They got the taste of power and went insane, once again confirming the theory that women should never be in charge. No matriarchy in history has produced anything in historical or technological significance. Biology and natural law recoils at the idea of female-centric society. The feminists try to use scare tactics like the theory of the male loneliness epidemic as a means to frighten men back into line. However, surveys also show that by 2030, nearly half of all women aged 25 through 44 are projected to become single and childless. Well, this is why you guys say invest in the box wine and kitty litter and cat food. But at least cats have a home. But, yeah. Now, not every woman out there wants to have children, as well as not every guy out there wants to have children. But there are going to be plenty out there that at one point did want to have children and families, but they screwed the whole thing up. And guys aren't going to be wanting to get involved with those types. The truth is, feminists no longer hold the power of social rejection. It's men who make that determination, and they are walking away from the woke system. What feminists should be more concerned about is the female loneliness epidemic that is looming for them in the near future. It ain't the future, it's here. I've covered enough articles about that, proving that. And that is the end, the abrupt end of that article. So I thought that was pretty darn interesting. And I got to say, I'm not surprised by any of it. I am. Let me backtrack. I am a little surprised by the higher numbers. I mean, I knew it was definitely growing, but not that high. And people can debate and argue about, the survey can be handled a way to kind of get what the results they want. But 23,000 people across 29 countries and plenty of other surveys and polls and stuff like that says a lot. And given, again, the statistics I can see in terms of the different age groups that follow me, says a lot, Now, real quick, I'm going to read some comments. There's a lot of freaking comments. If you guys click to the link to this article, you can check out the site. I highly recommend you do. And you can read a lot of the commentary. But a few of them that are entertaining. One guy says here, men, not just Gen Z, are avoiding liberal gals like the plague for one reason. They are insufferable. Male simps and soy boys are the only male companions suitable to them. That's true. And what's interesting is I've read a lot of articles when you have these masculine G.I. Joe women that are frustrated because they want a real man. But the funny thing is, there are these masculine FNS G.I. Joe women that even if maybe physically they look feminine, they're not covered in tattoos and built like Arnold Schwarzenegger in his prime, but they behave like dudes and they want to run the show and they're ball busting and hard headed. Guys don't want to be with gals like that, and they want strong guys that don't act like manginas. But the only guys they can attract, they'll stay with them, are the man bun, avocado toast, soy boy looking motherfuckers with the and that's what's going to happen. Another one, this guy says, what? Men don't want a woke, pierced, tattooed, obnoxious, overbearing, opinionated chick who claims she's equal or better than men and still expects the guy to open doors and pay for everything. I'm shocked, quite shocked. Another one says here, maybe because most of us Gen Z men had basic enough intelligence to realize that feminism only has to do with equality for the gals. In the context of having equal political/corporate power and not actual trade jobs, the stuff that keeps the country running. Also, why our marriage/dating numbers are abysmal. The women our age only want traditionalism and modern ways when it's convenient for them. They want traditionalism when the check comes at dinner, but want modern ways when it comes to going out with their girlfriends every weekend, scouting new talents. Bingo. Yeah, they're all about equality until it's time for the dinner bill, or it's time to shovel some snow. All you guys in the Northeast have been hammered with snow this year. How many of your wives and girlfriends said, don't worry about it, babe, I'll go out and shovel the fucking 3 feet of snow out there? I'm willing to bet none. I can't say none. There are a few good gals out there, but I would say the absolute majority, no freaking way. And last comment, I say this last on purpose, this is from a woman. She says, feminism to me is the right for a chick to live her life as she chooses and not be held back from being self-supporting. What feminism has become is beyond stupid. As for those who say dudes are not necessary, go work on an oil rig or in a coal mine, or build a skyscraper or work for a moving company. Bitch. See how that works out. Lowering standards is about as dumb as you can get and puts the safety of everyone at risk. If you can't carry a 200-pound odd person down a ladder, you have no business being a firefighter. Oh, and chick cops, the videos I've seen. That's from a woman. So there you go, guys. There's hope. So I'll keep doing what I'm doing, and hopefully I don't get kicked off YouTube. And you guys keep watching and spreading the word and sharing the videos and talking to people, and hopefully we can get the pendulum starting to swing back. I mean, the pendulum's swinging away from the craziness, and hopefully we can continue doing our part. All right, guys, that's it for today. Be sure to comment down below. Let me know what you think about this. And be sure to like the video, share with your friends, and subscribe. And I'll catch you next time.